Good morning, Jen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sorry, I was muted.
Not at all. Not at all. So, Jen, who are you?
I am the listing coordinator, executive assistant for my team.
Excellent. Excellent. And which team are you on?
My Chicago resource.
Oh, very good. Excellent.
Yeah. So just thought, even though I'm not, actively at the listing appointment, it's still nice to have notes and
Right.
educate myself as much as I can.
Smart. Back in a flash.
All right. And like I said, we'll gain some momentum here, but we're gonna get started right at noon. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us today at our virtual lunch and learn. We have Josh Friberg from Oregon. Josh is a speaker, trainer, and a coach. His company is called The Abundant Agent. And today we're going to first learn a little bit about Josh, talk about his mindset and things like that. But we're going to talk about, he's going to walk us through mastering your listing business. Is that correct, Josh?
Yes, that's my plan.
Cool. Awesome. So we're looking forward to it. So Josh, tell us a little bit about who you are. What's your background and, how long you've been in the business, things like that.
Yeah, so I've been involved in real estate all told about 14 or 15 years. I worked in manufactured home sales to get started and then got really involved in short sales during the last downturn. Got my real estate license in 2009, which is a fabulous time to get into the industry.
Yeah, right? Perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Yeah, but definitely learned how to work and learned how to hustle. And so those are the skills we're going to need over the next, 6 to 18 to 36 months, right? Mm-hmm. Along the way, grew my business. I had a solo business for a long time, and then I joined an expansion team. Some of you may have heard of the Five Doors Network. I worked as a location leader, built that team up to 25 million and 40 million per year, and then moved into executive leadership. I was essentially the training director for about 200 agents in 20 locations across the U.S. And we did right about 350 million in that expansion team. And I was in charge of all the training, the coaching. Really, in this virtual environment, I used to spend 15 to 20 hours a week on Zoom. So
really, okay,
yeah.
So you're a pro. You know how to do it. How to make Zoom work.
Yeah. I definitely spent a lot of time here. So
okay, awesome. And then what about personally, Josh? Who is Josh as a person? Married?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for asking, Joe. So I'm a husband and father, probably first, even before the other things, the trainer and the professional speaker. I love, really, our family is all about adventure. In fact, you can go look at, like, my wife and I have our wedding vows include adventure. Our family mission statement is to love God, love each other, and adventure together. So we love to take our 1968 Apache Eagle tent trailer, which was a $200 Craigslist find, and we love to go out to national parks and out in the woods, and really outside is our favorite place to be. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So give us a fun fact about you. What's one of the most interesting outside places you've been to?
Oh gosh, what a great question. Probably the most interesting outside place I've been is Nepal, the country of Nepal. So I used to go over there and I trained. I was really involved in youth ministry early on out of college, and so I was over there. I was training indigenous youth workers, and other church workers and doing a lot of work with orphanages, but also got to do a 3-day mountain biking trip in the Himalaya, which is
nice.
pretty outrageous.
That's pretty sweet. That's pretty sweet. All right, so Josh, with your background, right, being a national speaker, a trainer, and a coach, talk to us about the importance of mindset and how you approach mindset.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are struggling with mindset right now. I mean, I'll confess, right? There's days when I just kind of want to hide under my desk and be done with it because it's hard to decide, like, what do I even do today? What does success look like? You know, a month ago we knew. It's like, hey, I took a listing today, or oh, I put one under contract. But when things kind of bog down, it's like, how do we learn to kind of reframe what success looks like?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really starts with mindset. And I have this approach that has been really working well for me. It's something that's been working really well in the past. It's been challenged over the last few weeks, and I've been re-engaging it. And it's basically this. I call it early wins, small wins.
Okay.
Early wins, small wins. And a lot of us, like, we like to think about, you know, the big wins, right? Again, taking a listing, closing a deal, a big GCI number, something like that.
Right.
But I was thinking about the life of just the ordinary life of a realtor, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a real estate agent who sells 35 homes a year, you're actually an amazing realtor, right? I mean, you're in the top 10% at that point. You're doing really well. You know, you're probably doing pretty well financially. You've got some challenges at that level too. But here's the weird thing that I was thinking about, Joe. There's 365 days in a year.
Right.
If you close 35 homes, that means only 10% of your days you get to actually have a win.
A win day.
Right? That's no way to live, right?
Right.
And so I started saying, what if I start, instead of taking my wins when I have those big results wins, and I start taking my wins as the right activities wins, right? To put it in the language of, you're probably familiar with the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Yeah.
It's like, look at the lead measures more so than the lag measures, right?
Okay. So all the leading indicators, right? Like,
yeah, all those leading indicators. So that you can go home and, you know, I mentioned that kind of before anything, I'm a husband. I love to walk in to my wife and anybody, your spouse or the people you live with, and I like to brag a little bit, say like, hey, I did my job today. I did a great job.
right.
And so today, you know, that looks like I'll be able to tell my wife, like, I presented to some great agents in the Chicago area, and I worked on my book today for a real estate agent. I talked to 10 people in my database, and I practiced my listing presentation, right? Like, so, and then I like to stack those wins as early in the day as I can, right? So for me, it starts with my morning routine. It's like today I did my stretching and my, you know, physical restorative work. I ate a great breakfast. I read a book that I'm working on right now. It's like a 1,000-page book. It's going to take me half the year to finish it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, holy cow, and where I'm at, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. I've already done those things. I'm a winner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I have got a few things set aside for my work day. So it's early wins and it's small wins. And the cool thing is when you stack up lots and lots of small wins, guess what? Those lead to those big lag indicator wins or those results wins.
They compound. Yeah. They compound quickly, right? You know,
right.
Win.
Yeah,
Josh,
right. Like you and I remember the hockey stick graph, which we all got really familiar with this last 6 weeks, what exponential growth looks like.
Exactly. Right.
But here's the cool thing is that you can have that same exponential growth in your business. And it, like we all learned this last couple months, it's been so interesting. It looks like nothing's happening. It looks like nothing's happening. We're all sitting here in February, like, what are we talking about? Why are we talking about this? Beginning of March, what are we talking about? Why are we talking about this? And by the way, in your real estate business, that's what it's going to look like. And I called 10 people today. I practiced my listing presentation. Nothing happened. I called 10 people. I practiced my listing presentation. Nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, whoa, I just got a listing.
Yeah.
Whoa, 2 months, right? And then it takes off.
I got another one.
Yeah.
So Josh, you're a lot of people have talked about this. A lot of successful people have talked about their morning routine, right? And how important their mindset is on that. So when did you start practicing your morning routine? How consistent are you with it?
I'm going to give myself a good solid B plus.
Okay.
I'm about 85%, 90% consistent on my morning routine. And I started that. My daughter had just been born, so a little less than 7 years ago.
Okay.
And actually, it came from the One Thing. I was a certified One Thing trainer, and I was reading through, and in the book it says the simplest. And you always got to watch when Gary Keller uses an extreme word like simplest, right? It says the simplest way to something like massive success is to take control of the early hours of your day.
Yeah.
And so I started doing some work. I pulled out a blank sheet of paper and I journaled like everything I'd like to do in the morning before I start my work day.
Got it.
And I wrote down all this stuff. And then I applied to the focusing question. Like, well, what's the one thing I can do? And I determined that day that the one thing I could do that would at least make it possible for all the other things that I wanted to do in the morning, the one thing I could do was to go to bed at the same time every night the night before.
Got it.
And I was going to bed anywhere from 10 p.m. to 1 in the morning.
Yep.
And you know probably as well as I do, right? The things I was doing between 10 and 1 were not high value activities.
No, not at
right?
all. Right.
I think at that time it was Battlestar Galactica is what I was binge watching, right?
Yeah, right.
And so I said, well, wait a minute, Battlestar Galactica at 11:30 at night versus getting up in the morning, reading a great book and eating a great breakfast and feeling really good when I get to my desk.
Yeah.
And I weighed those and I said, well, this is obvious. And so I determined to establish the habit of going to bed between 9 and 9:30.
Okay.
And it took me 6 months to develop.
I was going to ask you, how long did it take you to do that? Yeah.
6 months. It was 6 months, and I knew that I had it because one night I typically trigger off of when my wife goes to bed because she's always had a really good, consistent bedtime. And one night I was just tired. I was just tired, and so I didn't say anything. I just went to bed. My wife actually couldn't find me. She was like looking around the house, like, "Where'd he go? I lost him.
Where'd he go?" Right.
Right. So then the last place she would look, there I was. But I didn't, all that morning routine stuff, I actually didn't work on at all.
Okay.
Because it was like, I have to establish the bedtime habit before I do anything else.
That was the most important, right?
That was the most important. And I established that habit. And then here's the interesting thing is the morning routine, about 50% of it took care of itself.
Got it.
Because when you all of a sudden wake up at 5:30 in the morning, you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
that's right. And so then it's like, well, I mean, I guess I could jump on Facebook or I could, but I'm not going to start binge watching Battlestar Galactica at 5:30 in the morning. Like that
right. Exactly. Yeah. You're going to.
So then it's like, well, I'm actually hungry.
Like, logically, right? You're going to be like, that's not going to do anything for my day. Productive. So. Yeah.
And so from there, I tinker with it nonstop. So I would say my morning routine changes about every 3 months. It's not massive, but but a lot of times I tinker with the order of it. And it's like, oh, should I read first or should I exercise first? Should I, pray and meditate first, or should I eat my breakfast first? So I'm constantly tinkering with the order, and I like variety. So I get bored with it after 2 or 3 months.
That's good to know that you are, that you're allowing yourself to change it up, right? You're giving yourself permission to saying, hey, as long as I do it, that's what's most important, but it doesn't be the same thing every day. Yeah. Yeah. And the fun thing is I've read some of the, all those books you were supposed to read in middle school and high school. Yeah. Right. I've actually gone back and read some of those. Yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird is a fabulous book. Fabulous book, right? Yeah. Yeah, but who would actually go back and read that in their 30s or 40s, right? Unless you have it set aside as like, I want to read great books. This is my goal, right? I'm going to read this. This is my goal. And I think that book took me 4 months to read. Got it. But, So Josh, before we get into mastering your listing business, all right, I want to ask you, I'm sure people are curious of this. You were part of a pretty monstrous real estate team expansion, and you were leading it. when was the pivot that happened that you said, hey, you know what, I'm done with this, and what was the why behind it? Hey, I'm gonna table this, and I'm gonna go into coaching, speaking, consulting.
Yeah, great question. For me, it came down to, I knew that I've known since my 20s what I wanted to be when I grow up, which is a professional speaker. And there's nothing I love more than being in front of a group, in front of an audience of agents, and seeing that moment when people go, oh, this is the action I can go take, right? I've been in lots of training where I left and I go, wow, that was amazing, but then my behavior doesn't change. And what's been so cool for me is 3 months later, 6 months later, for people to reach out to me and say, hey, I did what you suggested, and I took 3 listings this month, or I did what you suggested, and I'm more present with my family than I've ever been before. And so as I was leading, and I was having a great time as part of the executive leadership team for this big expansion team, but I was spending a lot more time in operations than I was actually in front of people and in front of, agents. And I like the whole thing about speaking too, getting on an airplane back when we used to do that 2 months ago. But, and meeting new people and experiencing, their part of the country and their culture and their specific challenges, then helping them overcome those.
So it was a conscious decision. You knew what you wanted to accomplish, right, with it, and you knew what your passion was, right? So you just went and went after it.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a really great book called Quitter. I forget the guy who wrote it. He's part of the Ramsey organization, but he says, don't quit your day job while you're trying to work on your dream job. And so I had worked on building this business. I had participated in the National Speakers Association Speakers Academy, and I had started building the business. I figured out what my life message was for people, and then I had actually gotten some bookings, and then it made sense, and worked together with leadership of our expansion team to transition to doing this full time.
That's awesome. All right. So thanks for that, Josh. So let's talk about strategy. Okay. So you do teach, you're a speaker and stuff like that. You have a lot of knowledge about mastering your listing business, correct?
Yeah.
All right. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
And we'll get some guys ask some questions as Josh continues to speak, but what is the overall strategy of mastering your listing business? Why is it the listing business, and why isn't it just the business in general?
Yeah, well, I think we're discovering, right, that and I hope you knew this already, but maybe you're rediscovering it right now during this coronavirus situation, is that the listing side of the business versus the buyer side of the business is the much more leveraged side of the business, right? At the end of the day, with buyers, you got to get in your car, you got to get out and show them homes. You got to go back to the house for the inspection. You got to go back to the house to show Aunt Mildred the house before it closes, right? When it comes to listings, before we started taking listings virtually, you maybe only had to go to the house once, right? Additionally, when it comes to listings, right, you have so much more marketing and branding you can do with a listing, right? It would be really weird if you posted on Facebook, hey, here's a picture of the Thompsons. They're looking for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, right, in Lincoln Park area. Right. That would be weird.
Market our buyers, right?
Yeah, we wouldn't market our buyers, but you can market a listing, because like looking at real estate is still one of the last legal forms of voyeurism, right? And by the way, traffic on real estate websites has gone up huge in the last few months because people love looking at houses, right? There's a whole TV network based on that principle. Right. And so the listing side of the business is just so much more leverage. You have so much more control. And to be honest, it's much more of a business conversation than an emotional conversation.
What do you mean by that? A business conversation more than emotional conversation?
When it comes to home buyers, and I actually enjoy the buyer side of the business quite a bit because of my behavioral profile, but the buyer side of the business, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in it, right? They're thinking we always talk about your dream home, right? When it comes to selling a house, it's typically not as much about the dream home, and it's about the dollar bills that the seller is going to make when they sell the house. When they've made the decision to sell, they're typically, this isn't always the case, right? But a lot of times they've already made kind of that emotional separation from the house. There may be some tears involved, but still it's mostly about dollars and cents.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely. Josh, do you coach behavioral, assessments and things like that? Do you recommend some of the people that you coach or talk to or speak with of concentrating on one side of the business or other dependent on their behavioral assessment?
I don't know that I would, particularly if you're a solo real estate agent. I think you focus on the listing business because it's the smart side of the business to focus on, right? And even if you have a behavioral profile that is more buyer heavy, the more intentional time you can spend on your listing business, the buyer business will take care of itself. Now, when you start talking about teams, I definitely recommend thinking through your behavioral style, because you may get just a lot of joy out of just running and gunning with buyers, and just to make it kind of quick and dirty, Joe, right? It's like your I's and S's tend to love the buyer side of the business, and your D's and C's tend to do really great on the listing side of the business.
Right.
But at the same time, don't let that be an excuse to not be proficient at the listing side of your business.
Yeah, and guys, what Josh is talking about there is the DISC assessment, and if you want to look into it, it's DISC. It's the DISC assessment. I think Tony Robbins gives it for free. Is that still?
Yeah,
true?
He sure does. And to break that quick conversation down, your people who tend to be more people oriented are those I's and S's, and the people that tend to be more task oriented are D's and C's.
Correct. Yeah. So what Josh is talking about there, guys, is that certain behaviors could be looked at as, again, on the buy side, I and S's, on the list side, D's and I's could be looked at more valuable to that side of the business. So, yeah. Josh, all right. So your overall strategy, right, on listings is it's a business decision. It's the right way to approach that side of the business. What about your system? So what is the system that you talk about and that you coach?
Yeah. So I talk through basically just 5 parts of mastering your listing business. 5 parts of mastering your listing business. The first one is find sellers. Is just find sellers. And we typically use the phrase lead generation. I've been, at least in my conversations the last 2 months, I have been suggesting that we think of it in terms of lead discovery, right? I don't know that anybody's ever created a seller, that you've gone in your garage with your tools, like that you've ever made someone into a seller. You typically find a seller or discover a seller. Okay, so I want you to think about finding sellers. And you're going to have to, my friend Reed Moore said it this way. He goes, right now you're going to have to dig twice as much dirt to find half as much gold. But right, somebody who is out looking for gold, they don't make gold, they find it. And same thing with your sellers. The second part I recommend is before the appointment. Master this part of what are you, between the time that somebody says, yes, Joe, I will meet with you and talk about selling my house, what happens between then and when you actually start meeting with them. And that mastering that piece of like collateral you send out ahead of time, pre-listing questionnaires or qualifications.
Correct.
Those become really important and can actually allow you to win the listing before the listing appointment.
That's awesome. Hey, Josh, when you say master, right? When you say, hey, master that part of it.
Yeah.
What advice do you give people that say, hey, how can I master it if I only have one listing presentation a week or a month or something like that?
You skipped to the end of my notes, Joe.
All right. Sorry about that.
Not at all. Not at all. If everybody on this call could just do one thing differently in their life, I could give you this one gift in your real estate business, it would be this. Deliver your listing presentation every single workday for the rest of your career. Every single workday. And I want to give you 2 really great ways to do this that are way different than anybody's been doing them. Okay. The first one is video record your listing presentation. I learned this from professional speakers. They're like, you want to get better at speaking? Record it. Because as soon as you record it and watch it back, you're going to be like, oh, that's what I need to work on. There's no amount of feedback that I could give you that would be as good as you just recording your listing presentation and then watching it back. That's number one. Number two.
Great advice.
Yeah. Number two, this is a really fun way actually to practice your listing presentation, is pick up the phone, call a friend and say, hey, I have homework that I have to do for my business. I have to practice this listing presentation. So could you and we'll do happy hour, right? We're going to jump on Zoom. You grab your beer, I'll grab my glass of wine, and I'm going to do a 30-minute listing presentation. We're going to pretend like you're getting ready to sell your house. And what I'd love is I'd love your feedback as a non-real estate agent. Like, give me your feedback on what that experience was like. Because if you're only doing one listing presentation and it's live, Joe, the only feedback you're getting is, yes, they signed the listing presentation, or thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
Right? But if you practice with your friend, they're going to give you real feedback. And they're going to be like, you kept saying CMA and I don't know what that is. I thought you were taking me to the Country Music Awards.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely. And Josh, that's pretty prevalent right now, of like, when we have, being from Chicago, obviously we're biased, but we're watching the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, right?
Yeah.
And the reoccurring theme with him was he practiced harder than anyone and he worked harder than anyone. So I had a coach in my life, Gene Rivers. Do you know Gene, Josh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Gene Rivers, I remember him saying, hey, have you been practicing your listing presentation? And I was just like, I've been in the business for 15 years. Why would I practice my listing presentation?
I'm a baller, yo. Yeah.
Well, he made it relatable, right? He said, hey, listen, did you play sports in high school? And I said, yeah. And he said, did you practice before the games? And I was like, yeah. He's like, what's any different?
Yeah.
You know, you need to practice before you go into the game, right? So that's great advice, Josh.
Yeah. Side note, I haven't brought myself to watch that documentary yet because I'm still brokenhearted about the Bulls beating the Blazers during that era.
90s. Yeah, that was their second championship.
Oh my gosh. Clyde the Glide. But I was in tears.
Yeah, right. No, for sure. All right. So where are we at now, Josh? Are we at number 3?
Yeah. Number 3 is your listing presentation itself. And what I call this right now is, we used to call it master the kitchen table. Now I'm saying master the video screen. Learn how to deliver your listing presentation over video and do it right here with people. And by the way, you may learn that you're never going to a listing again in the house.
So when I hear you say that, Josh, it makes sense to me. But what about like the people that say, well, I need to see the house. I need to walk through the house. How do you deliver a listing presentation?
Right here.
Walk you through.
Have them walk you through the house, right? Just have them walk you through and build rapport the same way that you would before. And then, do all the same things. Go, oh, hey, you're in the garage right now. Could you go show me the electrical panel while we're here? Okay, right. Terrific. Now, okay, I see that. You don't have to know what's in there. Just look at it and go, yep, it's not a Zinsco. Yep. We're good. Can you go look at the water heater? Do you know when the water heater was put in? Okay, great. We're going to need to find that out.
Yeah.
Right.
What's great about that too, Josh, is you get permission to say, hey, can we record this? Right. And then you can go back and continue to watch it instead of having to absorb it all the first time. Right. Yeah. You could record it and then go back and be like, wait a minute, where was that bedroom? Where was that? Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. The fourth step is sell the house. If you ask sellers, what is the one thing you're looking for in a real estate agent? 80% of them are going to say, sell the house. Yeah. And I currently believe there are 2 markets in every marketplace, right? Mm-hmm. So in the Chicago area right now, there are 2 markets in real estate. Those that have the 3D virtual tours or video tours, and those that don't. Right. And it is a massive, massive advantage right now if you have, if you are putting your houses, putting 3D tours, whether it's Matterport or Rico Tours or Immo Viewer, or any of those, or honestly walking. Now, don't do this. Don't walk through with your iPhone and just take a bad video. But like video and 3D tours
are what people are looking at right now. And if it doesn't have that, you are getting less showings. Because people are literally putting their life at risk if they go look at your house. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's their perception.
That's what we're being told, right? That's the perception. So yeah, absolutely. So you need to have those video tours. We're going to talk about some tools in a second here, but I'll let you finish up on the fifth.
Oh, the fifth one is finish the race. Finish the race. So once it goes under contract, I want you to learn how to time travel. And what I want you to do is time travel 45 days into the future and imagine everything that went wrong on your transaction between when it went under contract and when it closed and what you did to fix it. Now that you've time traveled into the future, you can be proactive about making sure that your appraisal comes in at value, right? When I teach this class, I don't know if Eric's on here. Eric is from Chicago, took my class, but when I teach this, like, I'm not ashamed to show up on a Friday afternoon with the appraisal with a stack of comps in one hand and a six-pack in the other, right? Like, that is a human interaction. The lending, I am in the lender's grill every week about making sure that everything's moving forward, right? And right now, I think every listing should have a pre-listing inspection before you put it on the market. Let's get proactive and make sure that it doesn't show up when the buyer does their inspection.
That's great advice, right? Absolutely, a pre-listing inspection, just so, hey, and then you can spin that of saying, hey, our sellers are very proactive instead of reactive. So, we did have a pre-inspection done. Here's the stuff that was taken care of, right?
Yeah,
people feel good.
But you guys, everybody, we're all going to rediscover something that Joe and I and several of you that were in this business between like 2008 and 2011 is a lot can go wrong in real estate. And we started experiencing this like 12 months ago, a lot more fail sales than we had, in 3 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to be proactive.
Josh, what about, everyone likes the shiny objects, right?
Uh-huh.
We're all as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're all guilty of what are the shiny objects. So, let's define shiny objects and tools first, but let's jump into some tools that you have seen work at a high level for people that are mastering their listing business.
Yeah. So I really like tools. I'm with you that actually aren't all that sexy, but they work.
Right.
Right. So one tool that I think every real estate agent should have is a 1-page outline script of your listing presentation. And when I do this physically, like at the kitchen table, I pull that piece of paper out and I set it down. And I say, here's what we're going to talk about today. And I'll go through and I'll check it off as we hit each of the highlights of what we're going to talk about in that listing presentation.
Yeah.
When it came to the virtual presentation, the next step that I started doing was building out a slide deck of slides that I could, put to make this more interactive, right? When I'm doing the virtual listing presentation.
Yeah.
And so we can build those slides out. And then one of the things that I actually don't think is a shiny object, but is something that's really valuable in your real estate business. I think a couple years ago, it may have been a shiny object. I don't think it is anymore. Really is those 3D tours. Or video tours of some sort.
Yeah, the Matterport tours. You feel, given your experience and you were kind of ahead of the game in this, do you feel that the Matterport or the the visual tour is just going to be kind of the norm?
Yeah, I think it will be, in the same way that that like professional photos is the norm, right? Like, yes, you can still catch real estate agents on their iPhone in the bathroom mirror occasionally. Right. And by the way, iPhone's a really powerful phone, but not nearly as powerful as the eye of a professional photographer.
Sure.
Right. And I think that, those 3D tours are really going to become the norm because buyers are going to become more and more comfortable with the idea of, and by the way, this is great news for buyers agents. They're going to be really comfortable with looking at a lot of homes online before they maybe only go look at one or two live.
Right. Yeah, I remember the National Association of Realtors stat being they're going to look at 12 homes in 12 weeks, right? So about,
Yeah.
and now that probably is going to drop down in time and the amount, right?
Yeah. And I think we're going to see virtual reality 3D tours. I mean, they're already out there. You can do it now, but it's going to get mainstreamed pretty quick.
Okay.
So I think for most agents, you're probably just going to pay a professional that has invested in the equipment. For some teams, the cost of that equipment and those memberships has come down. That I think you'll start seeing people who are maybe in like the 5 listings a month category starting to invest in the equipment themselves.
Cool. Josh, what about some examples, right? So you were on a very high-powered team. You've had, you've coached and talked with, I know that you've talked with a ton of people who produce at a high level in this business.
Uh-huh.
So, what are some examples that are out there of people that are thriving in this business because they've mastered their listing business? Or like, when you worked at 5 Doors, what were some of the great examples that you guys that you can share with us?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the great teams that I got to work with was like the Shift Home team in Maryland, DC. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting about them is just how much they know their brand, they know what they're about, right? And then they just dig into that.
Yeah.
As an example, I coach a team in Southern Idaho, rural Southern Idaho. But these 2 women, they know their brand, they know what they're about. And when this shift happened 4 weeks ago, they were like, what do we do? And I say, we dig into your brand and we dig into who you are as a person. And they've got about 500 people that know, like, and trust them. And they just went all in on that. Mm-hmm. And so it's like their social media is all on point around that. Their conversations with people are all around that. So it's really figuring out who you are in this business and what your value proposition is. All right, like, why should someone hire you? Answer that question and then dig all the way into that.
That's I'm glad you said that, because with the Keller Williams background, and you go to the big events, all those people that are on the stage there, right? They all have one thing in common. They all mastered something, right?
Yes.
There's always, they talk about something that they do at a very high level, right?
Yeah.
So quickly, I knew you ran, I want to give clarity around this because some people might not know this. So I want to talk about expansion quickly before you give us some advice.
Yeah.
So what is expansion, in general, and what was expansion to you?
Yeah. So expansion in general is, you've got a really great real estate business in one geographic location, right? So you've got it kind of figured out. You know what your systems are. You've got a good ops team. You've got a good sales team, right? You figured that out. And then you say, we've kind of maxed where we're going to go. We're starting to get into some diminishing returns on what we could get by going deeper here. Let's see if our systems and tools work over there, right? And that could be 50 miles away. That could be 1,000 miles away, right? There's a lot of different ways it works, but you take whatever your lead generation systems are, whatever your ops systems are, and whatever your sales systems are, you take those and you start implementing them in a different location. And then from there, it just it grows from that. But in the same way that, like, hey, McDonald's was doing great on the beach in California, and then they said, well, let's open a second McDonald's, let's open a third, and now there's 1 billion of them, right? It's how every other business expands. We just haven't totally figured out. I mean, we've only just recently started figuring out how to do it in real estate.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? It's like the fundamentals of expansion have always been there, but why it's just now starting to be talked about, in real estate is, or I guess over the last 5 years is really kind of ironic, right? A little bit, so just because of, when I say ironic, I mean, because, our industry has been looked at as kind of archaic for a long time, right? We're obviously going to do it. So that sounds great and sexy. Like, hey, I want to expand to Florida,
Yes.
Yeah, I want to expand to, Oregon or California or whatever. What advice would you give somebody that says, before they do that, what would you tell them, not to look for or not to do?
Oh man. Well, I'm going to ignore the fact this is being recorded, Joe, and I'm going to say something that might get me in trouble, right?
Okay. All right.
First thing, if you're thinking about expanding, don't do it. No, not, I would, you've got to like absolutely 100% believe that you must do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't do it because it's a whim. Don't do it to become famous, or like there's so much ego in that space that people are doing it because they want to have a 7th level business or whatever. They don't. They have a 4th level business that they just quit working in.
Right.
Like, do expansion because you believe in your system, you believe in the model, and you believe in the value proposition that you have, and you believe that you can help other real estate agents.
Yeah.
Don't do it because you want to have a place to vacation and be able to write it off, right? Do it because you believe that you can help other agents grow. And that's what we did. By the way, the owners of our company were not particularly profitable.
Right.
Right? A small, like, not, the scale starts really screwing up your brain. I was going to say, like, a small business is only doing 40 million, which, by the way, is an amazing business, is actually, as a percentage of profit, much more profitable than any of the expansion teams out there, right? And in fact, the small expansion teams have a higher percentage of profit than the big, sexy expansion teams. Now, that said, I'm super glad I worked in that world for 4 years. I learned so much.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what was the one thing that you took from that experience?
Well, so at a personal level, one of the biggest things that I got was just the network of people that I met. So that was huge. I mean, I just met an incredible network of people. But probably the biggest thing that I learned is, there's this lie at the beginning of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent that people believe, oh, that wouldn't work in my market.
Right.
And it's like, that's garbage. It works. I've worked in so many different markets as a result of what I've done, from resort locations, rural, urban, like big, dense urban, and more like mid-sized cities, like Portland or Boise. And it's like, stuff works.
It works.
Works.
The system works, right?
System works.
So Josh, I mean, a little bit about Chicago, right? Is Chicago failed the first time that Keller Williams was brought here, right? Then they had to reintroduce it. So you hear a lot of that, right? Of saying like, hey, well, it doesn't work in our market, it doesn't work, but it's a proven model and system, right? So you've seen people follow it, and I've heard Gary Keller say it to 100 people in a room, saying, hey, listen, the models and systems work, just make them your own. I mean, it's like, that it's the blueprint, it's the foundation of your business, right?
Right.
So do you follow, so your business, do you coach to the models and systems as well, Josh?
Yeah, I do. I definitely coach the models and systems. And I really coach hard on making the business your own. Like, don't try to be somebody else. Be you. Right? Be the best Joe Zimmerman that you can be, and let's craft the business around you. Now, that doesn't mean if you enjoy, waking up at noon, I want to give my business card to one person per day, and I want that to be my business model. Like, that's not going to work. Yeah. The reason that we coach to the systems isn't to coach to the systems; it's to coach the result that the systems give you.
The result the system can give you.
Right.
That's
that said, it's like, make it. And here's the other thing is, I really like to coach to what will you do? Right? If, like, I know there's people on this call that you will never, ever, ever call an expired listing. Right. So let's not spend time talking about that.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
you're not going to do it. Let's not do it. Right.
Right. So the guy who wrote Dilbert, Scott Adams, he says goals are stupid and vision is overrated. He has this whole thing on it. And what he says is create systems that make achieving your goals inevitable. Right. And so don't spend time focusing on the goal, focus on the systems. Yeah. And do those. And what are the systems that you'll actually do?
Absolutely.
Do those.
Yep. One of my coaches, right? He said, hey, what are you going to do?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the workout plan, right? Everyone's like, hey, I want to work out. I want to lose weight. You know, what should I do? It's like, well,
Yeah.
what will you do? Right. You know, that's the
Right.
first step of it. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. So Josh, you teach mastering your listing business. What advice do you give the agents and the business owners on this call? What can we end with, and what kind of advice would you give them how they go about mastering their listing business?
Yeah, the first things first is what we talked about earlier. Practice your listing presentation every single day. I actually think the other piece of this we didn't talk about earlier is I think we subconsciously self-sabotage our conversations with potential sellers. It's a little bit of like the dog that caught the car. It's like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
Like, and people go, you know, the worst thing that could happen is somebody says, hey, yeah, come talk to me about selling my house. Like,
Right.
uh-oh, what will I say to them?
Right. Exactly.
So we actually self-sabotage. When you practice your listing presentation every day, you're going to be gung-ho. Like, dang it, it's been 4 days and I haven't got to do this for real yet.
Right.
Right. So practice your listing presentation every day. The other piece, just to simplify this business, have 10 genuine conversations, like human conversations with people about real estate every single day of your career.
That's awesome. Josh, that's great. That's great. That's great advice. We appreciate you so much, my man. We're going to be, we're butting up out of time here. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more about your services?
Yeah, absolutely. You can head over to theabundantagent.com, theabundantagent.com. And actually, I'm going to put, I told you about the slide presentation.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull the slide presentation out of the class that I teach, and I'm going to make it available on there. I should have that finished in the next 2 hours. Cool. But you're going to find that by going to www.theabundantagent.com/listings.
That is awesome.
And it'll take you to the link for the class, but then at the bottom it'll have where you can actually download. It has about 8 or 10 slides that you can use as sort of the framework to then build out your whole slide presentation.
Josh, we appreciate that. Thanks so much. Yeah. Hey, I can't tell you how much we enjoyed you. Thank you very much. You were great. Appreciate you taking the time out. You guys, for tomorrow's Lunch and Learn, we have Mo Dodka, who from Main Street Real Estate Group. He is going to walk us through how he wins the week each week. So you're going to want to tune in for that as well. Josh, thanks again. You were great. This is recorded, so I will send it to you. And anyone else that wants to see it, it will be on our YouTube channel. So Josh, thanks very much.
Thank you, Joe. Great to be with you.
Talk to you soon.